everybody, welcome to GT Live. I got Kyle Bossman. I thought I had Kyle Bossman here. Kyle's a little late. We're in another building, so he's got to drive over to this building now, and he's apparently taking his sweet time doing that. Today, we are celebrating both our guest and our game at the same time. We are playing Ori and the Blind Forest. Mr. Daniel Bloodworth is playing that. The reason we are playing Ori and the Blind Forest is we have its wonderful composer, Mr. Gareth Coker, is here to talk about everything video games and music.
I will do my best
No
to
pressure.
do that. No, I'll be fine.
You were the first composer that we've actually had. You were the first music writer that we've had on GT Live.
That is a real honor. I hope to do our brethren proud.
We've had many voice actors because I do like the voice acting, but I do love the music too. Mr. Daniel Bloodworth, who's sitting on the couch playing Ori, actually is one of the people who's usually trumpeting soundtracks throughout the year.
Nice.
There's so much, especially not only to play the game, but it's always nice to go back through at the end of the year and just listen to the music on its own.
Right.
And I've been enjoying your score. I have not played the game. Bloodworth reviewed the game and has played it all the way through, so he's going to be going back through again. And if anything pops up, oh wait, there's Kyle. And perfectly to talk to Mr. Bossman as he's coming in and getting cozy. What our giveaway is, we're giving away 10 codes for the PC version, which I believe is the only version right now, of Hard West, which is a tactical Western game that was successfully kickstarted, is now available on PC. We have 10 codes we're going to be giving away for the best question that's going to be given to Mr. Kyle Bossman. I think your laptop might have gone to sleep or something since it came up here.
Sure, it's my first time being introduced to this laptop.
So Kyle Bossman's going to be in chat, so you want to throw questions at him for Mr. Coker for the end of the show. Let's get in with talking about music. So congratulations on being nominated for a Game Award, which is going to be given out to someone tomorrow night. It's some mild competition you're going up against.
We're going up against Master Chief, the Soul Survivor, Geralt of Rivia, and I'm missing one.
Big Boss.
Snake.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a pretty intimidating category, but hey, to be alongside those four games, it's pretty cool for little old Ori to be standing shoulder to shoulder with those titans.
Well, you put Ori up there, but I mean, you brought life, in many ways, to this character. You brought the world to life.
Right.
Do you think about awards? I mean, is it ever in your mind when you're working on a project like, oh, this could potentially be an award contender?
I don't think you think about. Me personally, I don't think about it whether it's an award contender. It's like what you realize, and at least with Ori, I realized quite early on that you're working on something that has the potential to be special. Now, the awards thing, like the public and the reviewers will take care of that. Like that usually sorts itself out at the end of the year. What you want, I think, when you're working on something is just to have the chance to work on something special, like something that people might remember if they play it. And I felt that quite early on with Ori. I mean, I did the prototype for Ori, so I've been involved with it for a long time. So, and I felt that from the prototype, which is why I ended up doing the game.
So when you were brought in on the project, did you know you were brought in as the composer? So when you first got access to the game, you knew you were going to be writing music for it?
Well, Thomas, the director, was like, they were looking for a composer. They found me on ModDB, and of all the places to find someone. And
Sorry, what is that?
It's a website where people make mods for PC video games, where a lot of pretty good developers hang out there. And Thomas was just browsing and found me and emailed me and said, would you like to do the prototype? And if we get funded, I'll pitch it to publishers. And if we get a publisher, you'll do the music for the game if you do the prototype for free. And I was like, okay, well, I played the game, I played the prototype. Looked a lot different back then. The rest is kind of history.
Well, did the music evolve as the game evolved?
Oh, the music is completely different for the prototype. Like nothing from the prototype made it into the final game because the music was kind of informed by the visuals, and the visuals were a lot more abstract than what you see on the screen right now. It's very detailed, like a hand-painted world. Like before, it was more abstract, a lot of silhouettes. So the music was a lot more ambient than it is now. But it's kind of as the game evolved, the music evolved with it as well. It's one of the advantages of getting in so early. Like both the art informs the music, and the music kind of informs the art.
Well, speaking on that, so you have this absolutely adorable central character.
Yes.
Very small, which is interesting for a side-scrolling and Metroidvania style game.
Yeah.
That you can really take in the environment, and that the character isn't really like blocking the whole thing.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like very dark undertones, very serious adventure. I think that was like the launch trailer really blew me away because like just rocks falling and lava exploding. I was like, whoa! I was not expecting that from looking at this giant like penguin thing hugging this little like stuffed animal. I'm like, oh, that game looks so cute. So I just wonder like, these highs and lows, you have these, the beautiful instruments that kind of like set up this really quaint, story, and yet these super dramatic moments that could easily fit in something like a Destiny or a
Right.
Halo. Was that tough, bringing both of those to the score?
The range actually is part of the really exciting part about the game, because it's like, there's a lot of games which, there's one tone, and it's really fun to do one tone, but with Ori, the music kind of evolves along with the character. Like, Ori gradually gets more powerful as you play the game, and at the beginning, when you first start controlling the character, the music is very, very frail and weak. But by the time you get to the end and you pick up your last ability, there's a track on the soundtrack called Completing the Circle. You have a circle of abilities, and completing the circle represents completing the circle of abilities. And that music is pretty triumphant and quite powerful. And I was like, this is an opportunity where we can like subliminally message to the player, it's like, you are now fully powered up. And it's little things like that which I think, well, I know it's popular because I know it's one of the most popular tracks from the soundtrack. But that kind of range, it's something you look for in a project, because you get to write the really big stuff, and that's really fun. But you also get to write the really small, intimate stuff, which is actually much harder. It's like, how do you tell a story using as few notes as possible? Like in the key scene in the prologue, which I won't spoil for anyone who hasn't played the game. There's a key scene early on. It's like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? Like, do I go over the top? Do I like stay restrained? And I worked out for that less is more. But it's difficult at first, but the more time you spend with the character, the more you get in tune with what the character needs in terms of music.
So were you producing new stuff up until maybe not like right before the game came out, but like, was there a period of time where the developers were kind of like, okay, we're done, we can't bring any more music, or were you allowed to kind of tweak stuff?
So I would say I started writing like properly like in 2013. And I was writing most of the music up until September 2014. We went and recorded the orchestra in Nashville in October last year, and then there were a few more cues that needed to be done after that because of last-minute changes, as is quite common. But because I have access to the game engine and I have access to the programs, it's actually quite easy for me to like make last-minute changes. And music is not one of those things that breaks games. It's just not, because it's just set up for me to like, I drag and drop the file into the correct folder, and it's done. I don't touch anything else.
I'm sure they appreciate
stay away.
That,
yeah. The last queue went in, I think about a week before the repository was locked.
What was the last queue?
The last queue, it was, I believe, the second chase scene, which is really just an edit of the first chase scene, but it was like just one of those things that just really didn't get finalized until the very end. We, for whatever reason, we just had a lot of difficulties with getting that to feel right. So it wasn't like a big rewrite, it was just like a lot of tweaking just to get it to be the right length and to get it to fit with the gameplay.
Mr. Boss, you had a question, and I cut you off.
Yeah, you said that Completing the Circle is one of the most popular tracks.
Yes.
Where do you go for feedback? Where do you go to see like what's more popular and what people are thinking?
YouTube is a very, very good place. I mean, the soundtrack's been on YouTube for a long time, and you just have to go through the comments. My Twitter, like people generally post like their favorite tracks on Twitter. I'm going to say this, I shamelessly type in Ori soundtrack from time to time into Twitter, because it's an easy way to connect with people. So Completing the Circle and the last track on the album, Light of Nibel, are probably the two most popular tracks, I think.
Is that kind of for your own amusement, or could someone offer a critique of, just a fan could offer a critique of one of the tracks or one of the parts of Ori that you would then possibly learn a lesson from and take that into a future project?
It's either a critique, it's just interesting to see what people are responding to. One of the tracks that I thought would be the most popular, people are just like, whatever. And it's usually the way. It's like sometimes the track you spend the least time on ends up being the most popular. Having said that, the track I did spend the most time on is the most popular one. So, but yeah, I mean, Twitter and seeing people play the game on Twitch as well. That's always fun. Just like being a shadow. Like, I'm just going to hang out and watch this person play for a while, because it never gets old seeing people play the game for the first time and seeing how they react to the prologue, which it's pretty clear we spend a lot of time on that, and people for the most part, I think are moved by it, and that's always rewarding to see. Just how someone reacts to your thing the first time. You can't get that with a film, really. You know, you don't have like the camera on someone's face while they're watching a film. Whereas, you know, with games, people are setting up and they've got the cameras on them. It's like you get real visceral reactions to like the game that you've made, and it can always inform like what you do in the future. It's like when you watch people play a game and they just like they sit back and you can tell they're not interested, and then they're fully engaged, they're leaning forward. It's just like simple things like that. So yeah, Twitch it's a great resource for us.
So we roll a trailer at the middle point of GT Live every week, called our Badass Trailer. And I believe the launch trailer for Ori and the Blind Forest was one of our Badass Trailers for that week. And I think one of the reasons I really loved that trailer and I thought everything just kind of gelled together to make a really good piece of advertising was the music. And it was because, you know, it starts off, it kind of felt like what the game was eventually going to be. It kind of starts off kind of calm and serene and then gets crazier and then, you know, like really gets intense. And, you know, it almost seems like we're playing a different game now just listening to the music because it were, you know, like there's polar opposites and just how intense things are. And then you get right back to the beginning, right at the end when you do the logo. Was that piece, was that editing done by the development staff? Was that a piece of music or a composition you did specifically for the trailer?
So the edit was done by a friend of mine who I went to film school with.
Cool.
And she's very, very gifted. She's a good director as well. We've known each other for 5 years, and I was like, we need someone to edit this. And you know, we get a lot of feedback from the team as well, but you know, someone has to do the nuts and bolts. It's just like it's very difficult to put together. I had no idea like how difficult it was to like put together a trailer with a narrative, because most trailers just like show cool stuff, 2 minutes, and it's fun as well. But this is like the most important thing was like, can we find a narrative in here? And we did have a narrative. We couldn't do that narrative again. You can only do that trailer once. And
of course,
so it's the best time to do it is the first time you announce the game, which is like what we did for last year's E3. The music that was written for it, it's a mix of music that is in the game. The very first cue of the game actually is also in the trailer, and then it's just music that was written custom for the trailer. Because it needed it, really. Like, you have to match the narrative. You can't just like grab a piece of music from the soundtrack. I mean, also, I'm gonna be honest, like most of the soundtrack wasn't done at that point, so it's kind of just needed to have something original written.
You say you can't do that, but people do that. You know, it's like I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I like there's some TV spots for Episode 7. I'm like, what did you do to that theme? You know, it's just like, we'll just take that last little bit and jam it on there. And it's like, no, it doesn't. My ears are bleeding.
It's a mix of like you've got to find something like that's familiar with the audience, and you've also got to try and make it work with like what you're seeing on the screen. And like we had an idea like what we wanted to do narratively. It's like, okay, let's just try and take these pieces and make it work together. I mean, we went through about 16 or 18 edits of that trailer just to get it feeling right, because it is a feeling like, and if I'm not feeling it, well, how on earth can I expect you guys to feel it? And you know, eventually we got to that magic point where it's like, okay, we've got something good here, and we're just glad that people responded to it so well.
Do you still feel it? I mean, do you get moved by your own work?
I get moved by it in the moment, and now I'm just like, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm always like, whatever project I'm working on, I'm excited about it at that moment. I'm obviously proud of like the work that we did on Ori, but it's like, you know, I'm always thinking about the future, like what's next. It's difficult to say I can get moved by it again because I've seen it like 1,000 times. But I'm certainly proud of it. Like, it's definitely one of the best trailers I've done, and it'll be hard to top, but somehow you know, I may have to do it again at some point in the future.
Well, it's just nice. Like we have a show that we do whenever we have the time called Trailer Score. We'll actually score trailers. We actually got everybody here. We got Kyle and Bloodworth, the people who are usually on the show. Yeah. And like I'll put videos up, and like inevitably there's like between 1 and 10 comments every episode. They're like, "You're scoring ads? What are you like? Why? What?" And it's like.
But some trailers are better than others.
There's no doubt. I mean, and clearly you can tell, you know, it makes me really happy that you're talking about, like, we went through so many edits, you know, it had to be a specific piece of music because you can tell. I mean, you can really tell, like, you know, not only is this exciting, but it's not exciting in a way where, like, hey, look at Call of Duty, got a bunch of actors together. You know, it's like this clearly encapsulates the entire experience in just under 2 minutes, you know, and it's very well done. So
thank you.
Makes me happy. You know, it's like, you know, like it's not just me. You know,
well, also it's strange that people give you a hard time for reviewing ads. I mean, your site's name is Game trailers.
Right. But even just that, to be laser focused on on advertising.
Right.
But like it is remarkable to me when every now and then something, because it's also like I mentioned Call of Duty, and you bring in live actors, so obviously raises that production value. Where the trailer that you did was just gameplay footage and music.
And
sound effects.
no dialogue.
But
it's like
just having that, no titles, no nothing, you get it. And like just doing that. You can tell when someone just kind of slaps something together, or whether it's a really good thing. So enough talk about trailers.
Well, I mean, sorry, I do want to talk about trailers for a little while.
it's okay.
I hear you say we a lot. It sounds like you get a lot of input in these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's unusual, I think, for a composer to be given as much access to the studio as I have. I think I can't speak for all composers, but I know that when I went to school, like the old story was just like, hey, you'll get some artwork and you'll do the music for the level based on this artwork. And
that's what I assumed it was. That's what I assumed that life was. Yeah.
No, it's well, maybe it is, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be. It's like you're not ever going to get a composer's best effort if you're not putting them in a position to succeed. And the position to succeed is getting them in as early as possible, like get them playing the game. Before the game was released, I probably played through the game about 20 times. And it's the same. It's the same with the trailer. I sat with it for a long time. They didn't just give me a finished video. It's the same with the cutscenes in the game. The cutscenes, they were storyboarded first, like no locked timings. I'd write music for the storyboards, and then they'd do the visuals according to my music, which is why they feel quite tight. That's very unusual. But for example, in a film, you would watch with the director the film from start to finish multiple times with your music, and they would critique it. You should, in theory, where possible, be doing the same with games. The problem is it takes a lot of time, especially if you're doing Witcher 3 or something like that. It's like, who has 200 hours to work out the flow of the game? Now, fortunately, with Ori, the game is 8 to 10 hours long. And instead of doing music on a level-by-level basis, you are doing it on a level-by-level basis, but you're also thinking about the big picture. Like, what does the music feel like from the start of the game, and what is that journey all the way to the end? And like, is there a flow from the very beginning to the very end of the game? If you just do it level by level, or in Ori's case, area by area, you might succeed, but it might feel disconnected. It'll still be, it still might be good music, but I think it's important for everything to feel connected. And there can be a danger where if the composer is not playing the game a lot, that the music feels, there's awesome music, but it's all disconnected.
Right.
And for me, it's all about the big picture. It's like, how do I feel at the end of the game? We want people to finish the game. Like, we are in an age now where people don't finish their games.
Oh, sure.
And one thing we're quite proud of, I know that the amount of people who finish Ori is quite high, because I think we can track all of that. So, and that's like, we want people to finish the game, because usually the endings of games are really awesome, and people put a lot of time into them, like the developers, and a lot of people never get there. Like, you want.
But I think that's why people really gravitate. I think like Journey and Portal were the first kind of like the dawn of this new era, where it's like, whoa, 2 hours and I got that. That's great.
Exactly.
So I think people really gravitate towards when you hear like, oh, it's just 8 hours. Like, that sounds great. That's that's a Saturday done. Or like a weekend. And I can come back to work on Monday, and I played this great game over the weekend, and it didn't need to be any shorter any longer. It was perfect. I always think of I think when Spielberg did Hook, he like came to John Williams and was like, I got nothing. I only have a logo. Go. And he was like, what, really? He's like, yeah, Peter Pan grows up, Dustin Hoffman, go. And just like, that's crazy. But like, John Williams could pull it off. But and there's got to be composers that don't play games, right? That was
don't get me wrong.
That was one of my questions on my list. Like, do you play games? This is something.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it can be done. I just think like you potentially making life very difficult. Like, if you have a composer that can play games as well and who is like into all of that, then it's probably going to help you down the line, because then they're speaking the same language as you. That said, I'm sure there are dozens of examples of composers who didn't play the game and produced great scores. So it also depends on the type of game as well. Like, it's just not realistic for a game like Witcher or Skyrim. They just have to produce a ton of music, and then it's up to the implementers, like where it goes. But yeah, I mean, for me, I've been playing games since I was 4. And I really started playing games properly, I guess, when I was 8, actually, like playing the old X-Wing and TIE Fighter games with my dad. And I think the first landmark game for me was Final Fantasy VII. That's like a big part of my teenage years. And then Deus Ex. That's probably... In fact, I think I did like GameFAQs thing recently, which was on Tumblr, like, and that was like my #1 ranked game. So, and then Shadow of the Colossus was second. So,
Nice. But yeah, I love the music in FF7. I love that Cloud just got announced in Smash Brothers.
Right.
And they go to black, and then it's just stars, and they bring the theme in. Ben Moore, I think it was like 1.5 seconds. It was like FF7 just immediately just knew it. Like. That's great. That, like he, obviously it was, amazing. It was a CD-based technology. There's so many reasons to love 7, but like specifically, he can pick that track out. And that's just like somewhere just waiting in his subconscious to emerge.
So one thing I do like about the game industry, there's a lot of iconic themes. Like you hear them instantly, and you're like, that's Halo.
Yeah.
That's Final Fantasy, and like that's one thing that is nice about working in the game industry. Like, I mean, Thomas, the director of me, is like, you can kind of do whatever you want, but I want a melody. And I'm like, great, thank you. That's really nice to hear. So, because in the film world, we're kind of like in this place right now in film where it's like melody is not popular at the moment. So games are like the antithesis to that at the moment. So you get a lot of chances to write different themes for different characters.
We're running a little bit late for the show. I don't know why. We started 5 minutes late for some reason, but and I know you're not doing any typing, Kyle.
Because I'm locked out of this laptop. I didn't want to ask to be unprofessional, but yeah, I don't.
Get in that laptop.
He locked me out. I can't. Blood locked me out of this laptop.
I didn't lock you out.
Yeah.
He wasn't cackling. He's not a super villain, I don't see shackles on your hands.
So yeah, everybody, I've not read one comment yet.
Your job performance, Kyle, is, I gotta admit, people probably just noticed. Like, some guy was like typing a question. It was like, he's not even looking at that laptop.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
You see how highly he holds you in regard, as opposed to our community. He's just like, I will throw the community under the bus, just as long as I don't interrupt this amazing conversation, which is great. Actually, we've moved past when we normally talk about our countdown for the week.
Yes.
Just a completely changed topics, and then we'll get back to this because this is great. I actually haven't gotten to like any of my questions yet. We haven't had a composer yet, so we're just throwing all the composer questions
that's
at
fine.
you.
Can
just
go
answer
ahead.
for everyone.
I'll do my best.
But we have a segment we do called Number 11 where we talk about our countdown. This week we're doing the top 10 board games, which you're thinking Monopoly, but that's not what we mean. We mean games with boards that you ride in them. So we were originally thinking, it'd be fun to do snowboarding games because it's winter, but like couldn't really come up with 10. 10 really solid, good snowboarding games, and we would have to like dip into franchises multiple times, which we like to honor one franchise just on its own, like pick the best game and figure out where it adds up with everything else. So we also included surfing and skating.
Okay.
And the reason why we don't need a ton of time for number 11 this week is our number 11 isn't that great of a game. It's Shaun White snowboarding.
Okay.
Like Shaun White snowboarding and California Games were like the two that didn't make it. They were like on the periphery.
That was the two you didn't make it, but there weren't any more than two that you couldn't find.
That was about it. I think there was a couple. There was like was it? I'm trying to think of the other one. Like with TNC or Surf Designs or something. With like the ape on the board.
Street Skater I couldn't get on this list. That's got an ape on the board.
Okay. Is that the sell? That's the best thing you can say
Oh my
about
gosh,
it?
Street Skater, to anyone who's not familiar, is a really good PS1 game. It's like there's so many skateboarding games out there that are pretty good. And they didn't make the cut. Street Skater is excellent. It's a PS1 game. Sorry, I'm just now like getting an onslaught of questions.
All right. Well, you do that. We're going to talk about board games. But before we started the show, I mentioned just explaining what the segment was.
Yep.
And you said music to my ears, Gareth. What was that?
Well, I spent a lot of time. I can't remember exactly when the game came out. I feel like it was in my last years of high school, but SSX Tricky, I put a lot about. I hope that's on your list. And I hope it's high up.
Well, there is an SSX game on the list. It may not necessarily be Tricky.
Right. SSX 3, I mean, there was a period where they were in a golden period, like SSX 2, Tricky, and 3 were all outstanding.
Well,
games.
SSX Tricky was 2. Yeah. It was SSX and then Tricky and then 3.
I can't remember the order. That's already like 12 years in my past. But I'm a big fan of the SSX games. And where have they been?
Yeah, well, they brought it back last gen, and a lot of people were down on it, and I thought that was fine.
Okay.
I didn't. Maybe my expectations were low just because I was so excited to get the franchise back.
Right.
One of the things that I really liked that they added in the new SSX that I hear a lot of people talk about. I think I want to say Burnout was one of the first games to do this, where your challenges would automatically be sent straight to your friends.
Yeah.
So when you log into the game, it's immediately like he beat you this, they beat you on this, they beat you on this. So you're just like, okay, I'm not even gonna get into the game. I know I gotta beat that score. And I really got into that with a couple of friends of mine, and actually they stopped playing the game because they were just like, okay, you win, forget it. It's like, no, let's do this, it's fun. But Yeah, I would love to see that come back. Obviously, Tony Hawk was supposed to have a nice comeback this year, but that didn't happen.
Right.
But yeah, surprise, surprise, it will probably be a Tony Hawk game on the list. But yeah, so number 11 wasn't that exciting. We don't want to spend too much time talking about it. But Sean White, I appreciate that you made a snowboarding video game. They're really touting the online multiplayer in the trailers for Sean White snowboarding. But you can kind of tell just from looking at it. I mean, it is last gen, but you can throw snowballs. That was one of the big things they were selling in Sean White snowboarding. Sean White, better snowboarder than game developer. It is the midpoint of the show. We are going to talk about our badass trailer this week. I just spent my entire Thanksgiving weekend playing Just Cause 3. Wrapped up the script on Monday, posted the review Monday evening. You can check that out on GT. It is a slow period for trailers right now because it's the end of the year.
Right.
Like all the big pushes.
Right.
Black Friday's over. They're done.
Right.
But there was a pretty darn good trailer.
I know the one.
And one of the things that I really liked about it was a contest actually that Square Enix did where they wanted people to pitch the launch trailer. The work put into this, I don't know if it was the same amount of work that was put into the launch trailer for Ori and the Blind Forest, but the launch trailer has a rap about explosions for Just Cause 3, and I think it's pretty badass. Check it out.
Welcome to the beautiful city of Medici, where deers walk freely, men still wear cowboy hats, cars frolic through the flowers, long-lasting friendships are made. You can even skydive wherever you want with no guidance. The cars are Wait, is he shooting on top of that car? That's Rico. I thought this was going to be a peaceful video. This is the Just Cause 3 explosion rap trip. There's an explosions everywhere. An explosion with some cars, an explosion in the air, explosion with the sniper, an explosion upside down, explosion with a rocket, big explosions to the town, explosions on a boat. Some explosions on the street, explosions at the station where I wanted something to eat. There's explosions, boom! Explosions! Walk in slow motion. Okay, I think that's all of them. Whew, I'm out of breath. There's an explosion at the base, explosion with the tank, explosion from a truck, wait, it's at my bank, explosion with the buggy, explosion just cause he says all these explosions from Rico Rodriguez. Explosion, explosions everywhere. Oh man, that's a lot of explosions. I'm getting tired. Just Cause 3. Set the world on fire December 1st. Random kick. Boom!
Classic. Apparently, G2 Live is running out of power. We thought we need more power. We need to hook it up to the generator at back or laptop. Classic. So I mean, you kind of mentioned this before, but we were talking a little bit about what it takes to kind of paint a world through music.
Yep.
And you mentioned that you had incredible access to this game, and that it's really important, for you to absorb yourself in the game to understand the experience and really bring that to the music. If you don't have that, what is the absolute the base that you need in order to start kind of wrapping your head around a concept?
I think it's almost impossible if you don't have art. You kind of got nothing to go on. A lot of what we did in Ori is informed by the visuals and the animation. I think if they'd sent me just like 10 seconds of if someone just playing the game, I probably would have been able to at least get started. If there aren't any
Kyle sneaking by stealth, Metal Gear Kyle.
He didn't have the box on his head.
Well done.
Sure. Nobody saw that.
Yeah, if you have a visual, that's like always the starting point. Like you can talk with the developers and discuss with them till the end of time, but at the end of the day, I think like once the visuals start coming in, that's when things really start to gel together. That said, I mean, melodies and themes, you can start on that very early on. I mean, I wrote a ton, and I mean a ton of themes that are just like in a this is terrible folder, or this is not good enough for Thomas. Like when Thomas says something is not bad, that means it's like a masterpiece.
Oh, no.
That means it's a masterpiece. Like, and then he says it's absolutely terrible. That means you might have to make some changes. I'm giving Thomas a hard time now. He's probably watching, but I think doing themes and stuff can start very early on. But like in terms of like matching the environments, it's impossible to do without some form of artwork and animation if possible.
So Igarashi has what is his game? What's that called? I'm just escaping me right now.
Bloodstained.
Okay. The Kickstarter. It's literally just art. He's got like a couple characters. Like
right.
He showed up. Where did he show up? Where he was like, here's another character. Was that like? It's like some event. Was
I
that
think it
at
was
PAX, or was that
Gamescom?
Gamescom? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's another character. Cool update. But I mean, was that so you could take that, just maybe a couple character designs, and like they did like a mock-up, like here's kind of what the game's going to look like, and you could potentially run with that.
I mean, here's the thing: as a composer, like you have to work with what you're given. Like what I was given for Ori was like the treasure chest.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes you're not given the treasure chest, and sometimes you're just given a gold coin.
But
it's all
here you
good.
are nominated for a Game Award, so it works. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, do you think, other than your undeniable talent, but do you think that might have been what contributed to this score achieving such a level of excellence and being recognized?
It definitely didn't hurt. I mean, I'm happy to admit this. I'm not the quickest writer. Like I like to spend time working on stuff, and I'm very, very fortunate that Moon gave me the time and space to like live with the game. So I think it's definitely one of the things. I just think about the time of the launch trailer, it's like when you realized that when we saw the reaction, like it's like, oh my goodness, like this really could be something bigger than we all thought it could be. It's like then you start to put in the extra effort, then you put it in the all-nighters, and that's when you try to do that on every project, but there's some projects which just drive you to hell and back, and you don't care. You just don't care. I mean, we had
Are you speaking from experience?
Yeah, every project has difficulties. I mean, we cut a lot of parts from the game. There's a lot of parts of Ori, which got worked on and that didn't make it into the final product. And that's just not just me. That's like you're an artist, and then your whole bunch of work gets cut. But we cut it for a good reason, because we didn't want filler in the game, and there isn't much filler in Ori. It's pretty much non-stop from start to finish.
Speaking of making difficult cuts,
oh boy!
So we're right now. I am listening to many soundtracks because we're just about to start deliberating for our Game of the Year awards. And I thought of this when I open up a folder and it's got all of your tracks that you've labeled. And I'm looking at it and wondering, how do you arrive at an album? Like, you have a score for a game. Obviously, some tracks are looped. Some tracks are supposed to fit a specific cinematic.
Right.
But when you're listening to an album, like, they're usually all 2 to 3, 4 minutes maybe each.
Right.
How do you do that? How do you isolate, like, yeah, these tracks are going to be on the album. Yeah, this thing's supposed to loop, but I got to end it anyway. Like,
Right.
is that kind of a hassle? Do you put a lot of work into that?
Yeah, that took about a week of solid work.
Wow.
And I was loving it and hating it, because at one point it's like, oh, I get to put this nice thing together in a nice package, but it's like, oh, I'm also killing several of my babies.
Right.
But for example, there's a level in the game called the Ginzo tree, and as you progress through the tree,
Can we get to the Ginso tree, please? What? We have a request for a Ginso tree?
Not soon.
he's actually not doing too
let us know
bad.
when you're there.
You start right at the bottom, and during the Ginzo tree, there's actually about 8 different cues that play. So what I did, the track on the album is called Climbing the Ginzo Tree, and it's about 5 minutes 40 seconds long. But the actual amount of music is more like 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not going to put a 15-minute track on
Right.
the album. So I put together an edit of the Ginzo Tree music, and then conversely, the end of the Ginzo tree results in a chase sequence, which results in a cut scene, and those two are kind of tied together as well. So I tie the chase scene into the cut scene, and that's a very satisfying piece of music to listen to, because it's all kind of connected. So I really tried hard to think about what is going to be satisfying for the listener, rather than just throwing 50 loops on an album.
Have you had lots of work on film or games translated into albums before?
I mean, I've done other albums before, but I've never thought about it like this, because the games I've worked on previously have been multiplayer games, so just doesn't require
Right.
If it has a narrative, I think it's very important to think about the album as a narrative journey as well. I think that's what I would try and do.
Do you have a folder on your desktop where you put all the dead babies?
Yeah.
All the things that you had to kill. Like, do you keep your tracks?
Oh, I keep them all.
Yeah.
Everything gets kept.
Yeah.
Probably for legal reasons as well, but
Well, I mean, so
but-
something that you really love that you made for Ori that you had to cut, could you use later on, or is that really just gone forever?
It could be used later on. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that got cut is really because it just might have been cut from a whole area of the game.
Yeah.
So it's stuff that could be used in the future. But it's more likely that I'll try and come up with something better, or that can help keep that scene in the game in the first place. So,
Sure.
but yeah, nothing ever gets deleted.
Good. That makes me feel better.
Well, since that took a week, is that something maybe like the next project that you work on? You're like, this will most likely be an album. You know, this is a a big game and popular independent game, AAA game.
Right.
Would you maybe like have be thinking of that during the writing process? Just
Never, never.
Don't want to get distracted.
No, it's got nothing to do with the writing process. It's that's something that you worry about after. If the writing process has gone well, putting together the album will be easy, because if you have music that you're proud of and music that your director thinks is good, well, it's probably going to be good on the album, as long as you don't completely cut it up into lots of little pieces. As long as it's there and recognizable to people who have played the game, I think then you'll be fine. But yeah, no relation to the writing process at all.
You've done a little film. I saw some short films on your
Yes.
resume. Have you ever done features?
I've done a couple of features. I did one. It's kind of like a companion of short films that are delivered as a feature film. That was with James Franco, and that was kind of a fun thing to do. But most of my friends who are directors, they're still like a few years out of film school, and they're kind of working their way through the advertising world right now.
Oh, okay.
It's my hope that one of them will eventually get their shot. In fact, one of my friends has actually got a screenplay that he's just finished, and I think he's looking for funding now.
I don't know. If you win a game award, you might not have time for that. I think.
I'm willing to work on whatever they throw at me. I've done a lot of commercials and trailers and stuff as well. So
do you have a preference for anything? Is there something?
I think overall the preference is like, do I get to tell a story? Like that's like, as long as I get
This is
to
a theme I've noticed that's come up many times in this conversation.
as long as if there's a good story to tell. Hey, if someone makes a toilet commercial and it has a good story, I'll probably be down for it.
There's a really great commercial, no, seriously. There's like a thing that you use on the toilet, but they had like a unicorn that has like soft sort of rainbow poop.
It's the Squatty Potty.
It's so genius.
It's great.
Talk about something where it's like, I would not care about this.
That commercial
but they nailed
rules.
it. They were just like, what if we get some guy straight out of the Fable series with a pooping unicorn and like ice cream, and it's just like genius.
That's a real
It's really
commercial?
good. It's fantastic. Yeah.
How's the score?
What's the score for that?
No, the musical
it's the
score.
musical
How is
score.
it? Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention. I gotta go back
I have
now.
to look it up now.
Yeah.
It's important stuff.
It's probably just kind of very simple, like man, like dun, 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 just kind of like we're in a fantasy world kind of stuff. Like
The thing is about
Portchester
those
style.
projects, like they can end up being real fun because like everyone's having a good time making them. It's like, hey, we're making a toilet commercial, like
Yeah.
whatever, It's like you end up making that toilet commercial might turn into a feature film. That's the thing.
Sure.
Like, you just never know. It's like I'm very bad at saying no. I've gotten better at it in the last year, but generally I'm bad at saying no. I'll say yes and no. Well, why not? Like I don't have control over the final product anyway. I just have control over the music. So
I did Ori and the Blind Forest. You ever play that? No, I didn't play that. I did a toilet commercial. Oh, I love that one. That's really great.
Exactly.
You're hired.
Exactly. You just never know.
How are questions going, Kyle? We got
I
any
haven't
questions
ta-
going?
yeah.
Florida?
Are we ready for questions?
I think we're ready.
Oh, we have some great questions. All right, everybody, I'm cutting off questions. We've locked them all in. We're going forward with these. This comes from Mr. Ryan Uzumaki22. My question is for Gareth. Was it difficult working on the game and trying to show new work to colleagues when they are not working from one location, but many different locations in other countries and time zones?
Yeah, that's something I can touch on. So yeah, Moon is not a centralized studio. So the director is in Austria, main programmer is in Israel, another programmer is in Australia, animation is in England. You get the idea, like all over the world. So in answer to that question, in fact, it was actually very easy. So we have an online repository which we can all upload to at the same time, and we all update pretty much every hour. And so we're all in sync with each other all of the time. So pretty much as soon as you upload something, you say, hey guys, if you update, you can hear the new music for Area X. And they can check it almost instantly. And we make fresh builds of the game usually at least once a day, if not twice. So there's just no way that whatever you've put into the game isn't being tested at some point. So you actually... It's pretty easy, and with the internet being the way it is right now, as long as you've got a decent connection, it's easier than ever before to set up an online studio. The disadvantage is it's harder to crack the whip. But if you have people who are good at self-motivating, it can be a dream setup. I can go to work in my pajamas and work on Ori and the Blind Forest or play the game at my leisure. If I have a good idea at 2 a.m., I can write it at 2 a.m., upload it by whenever I'm done, and it'll be there for feedback. I'll go to sleep, and when I wake up, feedback will be there instantly. It's so yeah, the delay is pretty much non-existent.
And you do you play this out on like a keyboard that you can
We have
modulate other instruments and stuff? Or
yeah, I have a virtual setup. So yeah, keyboard that like plays back orchestral instruments and various sounds. I do a bit of recording myself. Obviously, all the vocals are done live at my studio at home. So yeah, it's a mix of live stuff and virtual stuff. And then once the virtual stuff is approved, then we do the recording.
And that stuff sounds amazing.
Thank you.
It's. I mean, well, no, I'm just saying your stuff obviously sounds great, but like just in general, like I have friends, Christopher Tennant, which we were talking about earlier, who's done a bunch of stuff in film and games. I saw his setup and was just like, that sounds like a violin. That's crazy.
Yep.
He's just tapping down the keyboard.
I have a question that really ties into this. Actually, this is from Tongue Surgery. What is the most obscure instrument you implemented into Ori, digital or otherwise?
So at one point, it's about the Ginzo tree again. So the Ginzo tree level, it takes place inside the trunk of a tree, and at various points of that track, you'll hear the hammering of a hollow log, just like a real log. And I was just like, well, it's a log. It's a good percussion instrument. Like especially a hollow log, it's a great percussion instrument. That's how the concept of the xylophone is. It's just hollow wood, hollow pieces of wood. So I was like, let's just tap this, and I was like, great, I sound like I'm in a tree. Let's just do some music around that.
Where'd you find the log?
Our house.
Yeah? You just up backyard and just like this log's good enough?
Yeah, we have a lot of debris in our backyard, so it's just lying around there. Like it's amazing the sounds you can make just out of random stuff. Like one of my favorite things to do. It's not appropriate for Ori, but if you just tap metal staircases, they just make the most amazing sounds because they resonate for a long time. If you just have a little handheld recorder, you can get a good sound out of them. Then when you get home, you can manipulate the hell out of it, and you've got a new percussion instrument.
Is that like composer parties? Is that what it is? Is you guys
it's
you guys
total
just drinking and
nerding
just
out.
banging stuff all around the house?
I want to know what we can use the metal stairs for. What kind of game is that appropriate in?
I mean, if you could use it for any industrial kind of game, it would work. I'm sure it would work in something like Gears of War or something like that. Something with very aggressive percussion. If you really hammer something metallic with another thing that is metallic, it can be like a knife or something, or a fork or a spoon. It makes a fantastic sound. I mean, the other thing that makes a great sound, if you get a saucepan and fill it with water and then tap it and then gradually move the water around, it'll oscillate with different pitches. So try that when you get home. Get a saucepan, put some water in it, tap it with a spoon.
And what does that sound? I mean, can you do the sound?
No, I can't do the sound.
All right.
Just we can have a bunch of people now going home and breaking saucepans.
Yeah. Please try this out.
It sounds cool. I want to try it out.
Well, anyone can do it, and you'll be like, oh, that's kind of a funky sound. And then if you pour more water out of it, it'll make a different pitch. It's just
your next game is going to be starring a spoon. You'll be like, got it.
I have a very difficult question.
Oh no.
This comes from Mew. Where can an aspiring composer find their start with no musical background?
That is a difficult question.
Yeah.
But I think if you want to start writing music, I think probably the best place to start actually is, you don't need to necessarily start with composing. I would start with playing. Start to get a feel for playing other people's music, because then you'll learn what goes into the making of it. Another thing is just listen to music actively. One of my pet things that I like to tell people is how do you listen to music? And most people are like, I listen to it in the car, or I listen to it on my iPod when I'm on the move, or when I'm doing something else. When was the last time you sat down and listened to an album for 60 minutes and focused on nothing else?
Years.
Exactly. Yeah. You should try it sometime, because it's a totally different experience.
You should try it before Game of the Year awards, Scott. You should do that. That'd be great.
Because it can be a very special experience. Music is so consumable now. We've all got our massive list of digital files, and it's kind of a bit throwaway. I'm kind of glad that vinyl is making a comeback, because now it's an event when you put a vinyl on. And music is designed to be listened to, so you should listen to it actively, pay attention to it. And that is the easiest way to learn how music is constructed. And after that, like once you've got your listening and maybe you've like taken up a musical instrument, then you can start to like look into the theory and like, or you can just start improvising yourself at the piano and you learn what sounds good. But it all starts from like actively listening to other people's music. And don't just listen, here's the other thing, don't listen to game soundtracks or just film soundtracks. That's like the trap that a lot of composers fall into. It's like, and that's how you end up sounding like another composer. It's like, listen to anything but game soundtracks and film soundtracks. And then after you've listened to all of that other stuff, then it's okay to come back. And like, I'm not saying never listen to them. It's just like, if you want to be a composer though, listen to stuff that isn't being composed for visuals. Listen to stuff that is being composed for the sake of music.
I mean, do you get backed up with scores? Like, I'm freaking out because I don't have like nearly enough time to play everything I want to play before the year wraps up. You know, like I know people that get the screeners, you know,
Right.
for films and stuff like that. And it just stacks
Right.
sitting by their TV. Like, there's no way I'm going to
It's
get through all this
impossible.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, oh, boo-hoo, they're 2 hours each. And, you know, Witcher's like, you know, 100 hours and I got to
Right.
get through that. I mean, do you have like a backlog of stuff? You're like, I'll get to it. I'll listen to it.
There's always a backlog, but I actually try and set aside 60 minutes a day for listening.
That's great.
I should take some of my own medicine because it's not always active listening for me. I mean, sometimes I'm doing emails or invoicing or whatever. It's just like, you know, or taxes or whatever. It's like, sometimes it is on in the background, but I will like try as hard as possible to do active listening because it does make a big difference. In your
What a great
perception.
compliment, though. You could tell your friend, like, I finally listened to your album when I was doing taxes. It made it a lot easier. I just wanted to say thank you so much. It really helped make those 2 hours go by.
So this is, again, related. This is about your personal process. This comes from Tall Guy Alec.
Yeah.
How important is improvising to your writing process? Do you just sit with a piano while watching the game?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. It's I can play for hours. I'm a pretty decent piano player as well. I've been playing since I was 8, and I'm classically trained. So playing on the piano for me is a joy. Period. It's a good stress reliever, and I often find that actually the ideas don't come when I'm improvising. In fact, it's usually the bad ideas that get out while I'm improvising. It's just like, okay, let's get through all the stuff that makes me feel good and like gives me a giant ego and I can play all the fast stuff with my hands. And it's like, so I get all of that stuff out of my system and then it's like all of the detritus has been removed. It's like, okay, now I can focus on actual composing and not writing superfluous nonsense that isn't going to make it into the final game. So it's important in that it sets me up to compose. But I know that some composers would improvise as well, and it's like improvisation definitely has a place in composition regardless. I mean, it's kind of how I got started composing anyway. It's like I played in a jazz band at school, and jazz is all about improvisation and just thinking on your feet. And sometimes I do improvise though, and the best idea can come when you're not expecting it, which is why I do record everything that I improvise.
Oh, you might not know it's a good idea at the time.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
So I want to piggyback on top of that one, actually. This comes
Yep.
from Ahab GT. Do you compose with a piano and paper, or do you use composition software? If so, what software?
It's like 90% composition software. Occasionally it's piano and paper. But the software I use is Cakewalk Sonar, which is a PC software program. As far as like for the sounds that I use, I mean, I pretty much use every commercially available sound library there is, the same probably that Christopher Tin uses. So there is a ton of software out there that can enable you to make your own music, whether it be for an orchestra or for a rock band or whatever you want, really.
What does it look like? The actual, like, the software itself?
So you've got a list of your tracks. You've got piano, strings, brass, woodwind, etc., etc. It's a long list of tracks, and then whenever you record something, it just records a block of MIDI information, which is the digital representation of your music, and you're just building blocks on top of blocks. It looks very similar to like editing software when you've got like a bunch of blocks and then graphics, and there's so many blocks. It's not attractive to look at. So you need a nice screen. Honestly, if there's one thing, if you're going to be a composer, invest in a nice monitor so you don't actually go blind, because there's just so many small buttons.
What kind of screen do you have?
I have a 32-inch Samsung monitor, which is a 1440p monitor. I can't do 4K because it's too small, and I have 2 of those side by side. So it's 64 inches of real estate, which is nice.
Yeah, everyone cares about these things. It's
So,
yeah.
I usually have the game on one screen and then my software on the other, which is nice.
Okay, this comes from Elephant. This is forward thinking. Do you think game soundtracks will get more visibility at the Grammys like Journey did in the year 2012? Do you see some of that continuing?
I do think it will continue. I think it would seriously help though if the game soundtracks had a separate category. Because right now I believe the title is Best Score for Visual Media, and to lump in film, TV, and games in one category. I remember that year. I mean, Austin was alongside Trent Reznor, Hans Zimmer, John Williams, and Alexandre Desplat, I think. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's going to be hard as long as films, because films have more visibility than games right now, and I'm not sure how that's going to change. I'd certainly like it to change, but I think the long-term solution personally is to have a whole category for games, because it is a very, very different skill set than writing for film, mainly due to the fact that a film or a TV show is linear. It's A to B and that's it.
And only 2 hours, or a certain amount of time.
Right.
TV is obviously much longer.
Whereas the vast majority of games, with a handful of notable exceptions, are, you're talking at least an 8-hour commitment, more like a 30 to 40-hour commitment, and in rare cases 100+ hours. I just don't think you can compare the two mediums in that way. I mean, it's absolutely awesome if someone gets nominated in the film in the visual media category. See, I just call it the film category because that's what I think when I see it. But I feel like the way forward is for all game composers to try and lobby for a separate game category. We should be proud of game music, and we should be proud to have it as a separate category. I don't think we should be competing with film and TV, and it's not because game music is some kind of second-class thing. I think it's awesome that we have game music, and it should be a separate category, and it should be celebrated in its own way.
Agreed. Ditto.
This comes from Super 3D Cal. How important is using reoccurring themes to tell the story in your soundtracks?
Yeah, story. Is that something you care about at all?
Yeah, we got to show softball here.
Well, also reoccurring themes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's well known that I make use of one theme in particular pretty frequently in the game, and I did that for a reason. It's not just because I couldn't come up with another theme. I'm like, the game is called Ori and the Blind Forest. It's Ori's journey, and Ori's theme is represented in different ways throughout the game, and I scored the game from Ori's point of view. I think if you have multiple characters that go on multiple journeys throughout the game, you need to develop their themes according to those characters' story arcs. But in terms of having a recurring theme, I mean, the other reason just to have one is because it can be an iconic thing for your game. It's like we've already discussed this. It's like, when you hear the theme from Halo, like, it's Halo, and I am hopeful that if we get to play the Ori theme again in the future on a second trailer, that people will recognize it instantly. That's my hope, and I think it can really help, like, sell the character and sell the game as well. And a lot of composers like before me have done this. Jerry Goldsmith, the film composer, I mean, he was relentless about using the theme, and it was one of my favorite lessons in film schools. If in doubt, like if you're struggling to write music for a scene, if in doubt, play the theme. It means you've got to have a good theme in the first place.
Right. But
if you've got a good one, then just play it. And it's amazing how many problems it can solve. I'm like, what should I do for the chase scene? Let's try the theme here. Okay, this is working. I was not expecting this, because I was expecting to have to do like normal like action music, like everything's going crazy. It's like, well, what would happen if we put the theme on top of it? Well, this feels awesome because it puts me in Ori's perspective, but with all this epic music happening underneath him, it makes him kind of feel heroic because he's doing all of this heroic stuff. He's running away from like gushing water, like that's coming up a tree. So, yeah, it got to the point where I was like, well, let's try the theme here. And there are times when it doesn't work, but you might as well try it if you've got a good theme in the first place. So super important is my answer.
Super important.
Yes.
When did you know that you had it? When did you know this? Oh, there it is. That's Ori's theme.
Well, I didn't at first. That's the thing. It was one of those things that got put in the Dropbox folder, and someone else actually was like, I think it was one of the programmers on our team. He was like, yeah, this is pretty good. I was like, oh, really? And I was like, well, okay. And then I actually, because it was just a sketch at that time.
Sure,
It's just like a piano sketch which I'd done in like 20 minutes. And I was like, okay, well, I'll flesh it out and do it properly now. And I was like, oh, there it is. And then I spent some significant time on it. I was like, that's the main theme for the game. Yeah, I just didn't realize it at first. So sometimes you need to take a bit of time away from the music or the game and come back to it. It's like, oh, actually there is something here, because at that point I was in theme mode, and I was like, let's just write like 20 different things and see which one sticks.
If there was to be an Ori 2, would you kind of appreciate like having distance from the project? You know, if you were like to return to it, or just any sequel, you know, something that you had done previously.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't jump right back in, but you know, if there was to be a second one, it's nice having the access that I do at Moon. You know, I would get to see like all of the stuff that they're working on anyway. So it's kind of like there's always a time, like a right time to like start jumping in. When you start to see a few things come together, it's like, okay, maybe I can start doing some work now.
So you're saying you're still peeping into those drop boxes?
Oh, all the time.
Okay.
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff in there. Some stuff which is very bad, but some stuff which is very good. So.
Man, I'll tell you, I could talk about this for hours, but we got to wrap the show up.
I have one more very important question.
Okay.
This comes from Dante the Pyro. Have you ever played Paper Mario and the Thousand-Year Door?
I have not. Should I?
Oh, absolutely, you should.
Okay.
How's the music in that game? Is it good?
Oh, it's spectacular.
Yeah. I mean, for Mario games, though, does it hold up?
Oh,
Mario
Paper Mario games, those killer soundtracks. Yeah.
Okay. But not an influence, not an inspiration.
But I'll have to check it out now, given that one of your viewers.
You still got your GameCube around, right?
No, but I can get one.
Wow. Hey.
Okay.
Yeah, pick me one up while you're at it. Sadly, we got to wrap up the show. I'm going to talk really quick about stuff that you guys can check out on game trailers this week. Actually, a very exciting week on GT. As we mentioned, the top 10 board games is tomorrow. Tomorrow night, you're going to watch this man go up for the other 4 giant soundtracks that were released this year at the Game Awards, which is here in Los Angeles. I will be in attendance. This weekend is PSX. I will be attending with Brad Ellis and Ian Hink, and Mr. Ben Moore is also heading up to San Francisco to go to PSX this weekend. A Final Bets will be dropping tomorrow on GT for both of these events, for Game Awards and for PSX. Curious to see how that times out. Xenoblade Chronicles X is currently being reviewed. I am making my way through a Game of Thrones for the review. Mr. Bloodworth is making his way through Tales of the Borderlands to try to wrap up a review before the year finishes. Rainbow Six Siege review is going up any second, right?
No, not any second. It'll probably be tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I checked out Far Cry Primal today, and I'm going to be writing a preview for that tonight, and that will be going up tomorrow. You can check that game out. You can check out our direct feed early access look at the next crazy Far Cry game that they're doing. And of course, new Final Bossman, new Huber hype, new mandatory update. I'm in Final Bossman this week. Gotta watch it.
You're really good in it, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. One take wonder.
One take wonder.
And that is it on Game Trailers this week. Anything that you want to talk to our staff about, or talk to our community about that you're up to? Any other works that you're doing? Any appearances you have?
Keep an eye out for more music coming to Ark Survival Evolved. I'm pretty sure there's a good chance a few of your viewers have played that game.
Do you have an Ark folder that you can just drop stuff into?
I do. Actually, the Ark folder isn't as it's more like an online thing. It's not. I don't have as much access to that one as I do for Moon. But honestly, that game is so big and enormous. It's kind of intimidating.
Yeah. How do you add music to that? They say we need music for this scenario, and we need this music
it's
for here too?
We're still like talking about like the music in that, like how to add it. It's like I haven't really spent a huge amount of time. Like I did a lot for the early access,
Sure.
and I did this crazy thing for Halloween. Like they asked me to do like a Tim Burton style, Danny Elfman style thing for Halloween. But we're gonna start putting in the proper music as opposed to the early access music, starting probably like January, February. But maybe a folder will be created just for that purpose.
Cool.
And I've actually got a game coming out next week. It's a very small game. I can't even tell you what it is.
Cool.
It's but it is coming out next week. It's a very small but very silly indie game. The music is completely the opposite to Ori, but it's very fun.
Lots of banging on stairs?
There is a little bit of. There's not banging on stairs. There's banging on some weird stuff though.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
What a tease! You should tell everyone your Twitter handle then again, so they make sure they know when that comes out.
Yep. Twitter is simply Gareth Coker, GarethCoker. Should be easy. I should be fairly easy to find.
Well, thank you so much for coming by. Thank you,
My
Bloodworth,
pleasure.
for playing Ori the whole time. We didn't really get
Yeah.
into the mechanics of the game that much, but
He's actually made it almost to the end of Act 1.
nice.
So
boy.
yeah.
So it's almost like you played this game before. And I, gotta give a special thanks to the person we've largely ignored the entire episode, Mr. Ian Hink on the TriCaster. What's up, dude? Nice mixer.
Pretty good. Yeah, look at this fresh new thing. Watch this. Watch this. Oh, they move on their own.
That is really cool.
It's really cool. Once I was like,
Gareth,
once
is
I
that boring
figured
to
out how
you? You
this
probably
thing
have
works.
Oh,
tons
no,
of
that's
that.
really exciting.
Oh, okay.
I'm surprised he didn't activate Vegas mode.
Is there such? Is that
If
a
I
thing?
knew what
There's
that
usually a
was,
Vegas
I would
mode
do
on
it.
every single board. Yeah.
Ian, hit the Vegas mode button, man.
I don't think it was.
He's gonna have to look that up now.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I guarantee it exists.
Cool. All right.
Man, learning all sorts of crazy stuff. Thank you, Kyle, for handling community.
got there
Want to give a
eventually.
special shout out to this is our first GT Live that we have done without Elise Willems.
yeah.
He used to be at Game Trailers and is not at Game Trailers anymore. We actually were doing GT Live a week ago because we were on vacation. The week before that was her last day. The week before that, she actually hosted GT Live. And she sat in this chair, and unfortunately, I got to deal with Kyle now. So, Elise, I just want to let you know he was 5 minutes late. I miss you very much, and best of luck to you and your newest endeavors. And once again, thank you so much for coming by. I love the
thank you.
conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Again, I could go on forever, but Game Awards tomorrow night. Vote for this guy, and we'll see you next week.